All right, this is Mr. McMurray, and we're back at the bones, looking at the long bones. All right, we talked already. This is a long bone because it has a head at each end, which is called the epiphysis. This is the proximal end where it goes in the hip. This is the distal epiphysis where it's the far end, farther away from where it attaches to the body. All right, it has ends that are made of spongy bone, and talk more about that in a minute. The diaphysis is the shaft part in the middle here, so it's labeled over here, but B, this part right through here. All right, made a very compact, hard bone. All right, makes it very tough material. That's why your femur is a very tough bone. Your long bones are very tough. Not that they can't be broken, but they are very tough to do that. At the ends, where they fit into sockets, all right, they have cartilage around the end. It's called articular cartilage because it means joints, and a joint, another name for joint, is an articulation. Where bones articulate or come together, it's called a joint. Okay, and there's that. And then, of course, at the other end, where the tibia and the fibula and the patella might touch it, it's going to have cartilage as well. Hyaline, hard cartilage, keeps it smooth, keeps it from rubbing, and so forth. All right, periosteum is the outside coating around it, which is kind of a membrane around the outside of the bone. It's got a lot of blood vessels in it that go into the bone from there, and carry food and nutrients into the bone and carry out waste products and so forth. And it is where osteoblasts, the cells that come and make new calcium on the outside of the cell to make it bigger, or up here at the growth plate where it gets longer and longer, you can add it up there. And it is attached very tightly by Sharpie's fibers. All right, and we talk about the epiphyseal plate is right here, so there's like a little caps on the end of the bone. They just keep adding more and more calcium down here and pushing those little caps longer and longer. It makes the bone get longer or lengthwise. Okay, now getting bigger around is where it just adds it to the outside here and it gets more. Now, some of this over time would begin to migrate farther up too, and you would start getting more and more compact bone here as it gets longer and longer. All right, and I can't remember if that's where we left off, but that's pretty close. All right, bring us to F, which is compact bone. Okay, the compact bone is right here, not the outside layer. That's the periosteum, that membrane. We tend to think of it as the outside because when we see a bone, we think of the hard part, which is the compact bone. But when it's alive, there is that membrane around it. Okay. All right. And so that's the compact bone. And just remember, it's not the outside layer. It's because the outside layer is that little periosteum. All right. Now, inside the compact bone, there is a hole or a chamber. Okay, that's what we already talked about. All right. With the thing, you have that hole or the opening on the inside. They're hollow. Important one, because if our bones were solid, they'd be so heavy, we'd need a lot more force and stuff to pick them up, so it makes them lighter. All right. And yet they can still be strong because they have that strong, hard layer of compact bone out there to protect them. But it makes them a lot lighter. But since you have empty space there, medulla just means the middle, so it's that middle cavity, all right, or empty space. Since you have it there, you can put things in there. All right. When you are an infant or a young baby, it is filled with red bone marrow, which is otherwise known as myeloid, not uroloid, myeloid. Okay, no, actually, you have some too in your bones. It's myeloid tissue, okay, which is a fancy name for red bone marrow. All right, and that's what produces our blood cells. We talked about that in the skeletal system notes. Hematopoiesis, making blood cells, is one of the main functions of bones, and it happens in the red blood cells. Now, our red bone marrow, where it makes blood cells. But as you get older, you get a longer bones, and the red bone marrow tends to move up to the end, and so it's in the end of your long bones. Your femur, for example, is one place where you can find that. You're also in some of your flat bones. Okay. Oops, I don't have a rib with me. This is a vertebrae of a cow. Kind of cool looking. Looks like some kind of fancy fighter in Star Wars. But yeah, the flat bones like this, like the rib parts, which would look similar to this, will have that. The sternum, the breastbone will have that as well. So there's be some flat bones and the ends of the long bones, and that's where the red bone marrow is that makes your blood. And you are constantly making millions and millions of red blood cells to replace the ones that are missing. I forget how many are in your body, but it's like times 10 to the 20 something number. It's just an incredibly large number of red blood cells. Now, as adults, since the red bone marrow is no longer in the middle, okay, it's moved out, then it can fill up with this stuff, which is yellowy type stuff, which is called the H on here, is the yellow marrow, which basically yellow marrow is fat, okay, and it's a place to store fat. If you have a lot of fat or marrow in the bones, then that's a good sign that it's healthy. If it's brown and bloody or something like that, streaky, usually that's a sign that you're not very healthy. Animals, particularly, if you kill an animal, you can tell if it was sick or if it was healthy or not. So that's the yellow bone marrow, and that's, like I said, mostly fat. I have some actual joints that we got from a butcher store that I will probably try to bring up tomorrow, make a short video of, to show you that. But if you've ever cut in a steak, and the steaks that have a little round thing like the round piece of bone and it's hollow in the middle, if you look at it before it's cooked, a lot of times it will have yellow fatty looking stuff in it, and that is the yellow marrow. Okay, I think that's it. Let me double check just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure that's it. Nope. Oh, one more thing. Sorry, my bad. The nutrient artery, which is this artery coming in here. So you have a blood vessel coming into the bone. Now, it would go off in little tiny blood vessels that go all through the bone here. There's little canals where the blood vessels can go through there, which we'll talk about more on the next set of notes. But eventually, there's one on the inside that picks up a lot of that stuff and then brings it back out. So you have a blood supply going into the bone and a blood supply going out of the bone. All right. And when I broke this one, found the broken one. All right. When I broke this one, if you look right here on the break, you see this little tunnel going through it, and that's probably why it broke on that spot, because there's a hole going through the bone, which makes it a little bit weaker there, and that hole represents where that blood vessel goes into. One of these blood vessels goes into the long bone, and so that you can see where the nutrient artery goes into the bone right there. Okay, how it kind of angles through there. All right. And that, I believe, is all the notes that we have for this. All right. Now, tomorrow we will have a quiz over this. It will be labeling the drawing of the long bone. Okay, all these different labels on it. You need to know where those are. But also, it will have a few definitions. For example, I might say in an adult, what is stored, blank is stored in the medullary cavity, or I might say yellow bone marrow is stored in the blank, or something like that. So there may be a few definitions, but a lot of it will be labeling as well. So make sure you can label it, and make sure that you can know kind of what the parts do and where they're at. Okay, so anything on this notes are fair game for that quiz. Then we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.